Hi, it's Aaron here from Human First, and I'm going to take you on the journey that I have taken myself, which I now call the Pheonix Path. And basically, this is my story, okay, and this is where it stems from. It started out all from childhood. I had a lot of childhood trauma when I was younger. I had very violent parents at the time. My mother was very young, she had me very young, and that's where it all stemmed from. She split with my dad. My dad disappeared. I never saw him again. He was stopped by the prison service from seeing me. I then moved in with my grandmother, who was an alcoholic, and that's where my mother's trauma came from. So it was generational trauma, essentially, that was brought down to me. So I became a caregiver for my mother at the time, that support that she needed, and she lent on me. And basically that was a learned trait, that's something that I learned, and then that's something that I brought into all my relationships as I grew older. And so every single relationship that I've had, I've only had three serious relationships in my entire life, and every single one of them has just triggered my trauma wounds every single time, and it's always ended up really turbulent and ended very badly. But the main point that I'm trying to get across now is that has basically led every single decision that I've ever made in my life. And the realization point and the moment that I became aware was the last time, okay? So this was with my most recent girlfriend. I've always been very ambitious as a person. I've always wanted more from my life. I always knew that I had something to give. I just didn't know what, okay? And I felt very lost through my life because I didn't know or have any direction, because I left home so young, I left at 14 and kind of just fended for myself. And I just bounced from place to place, not really having a direction, right? But I knew that I wanted to do something, and I knew that I could. So I've had various points in my life where I've made quite a lot of money, but then I've always, every time I get up to the top of where I am, I then fall to my weakness, which is relationships. It's like anybody, as humans, we need connection and we need love, right? And so I would always be chasing that and looking for that, but just not knowing where to find it. And I wasn't fully healed, and I'd always be attracting the wrong people, right? I didn't know how to set boundaries. I didn't have any clear kind of expectations when it came to a relationship, or any kind of standards for myself. So I would always attract the wrong ones. The main cause of when I became aware of everything, and when I started to heal inside and look from the inside out, was through this relationship. So I was obviously making a shit ton of money at the time, and I'd just been arrested and just ended up in prison. I met this girl probably about 2 months beforehand, and I really liked her, we really got on. I mean, from a perspective as like we enjoyed the same things, realistically now is totally different. I'll tell you a little bit about it. So yeah, we met on Tinder. We got to know each other a bit, and then I think we were sort of seeing each other for maybe 2 months prior. I should have seen the red flags from the start, but obviously I wasn't aware at the time, so I didn't look out for these things. Then I got arrested. Like I said, I was at the top of my game at this point. I had a lot of money. I was making a serious amount of money. I went to prison, and then I didn't know what to do. Well, what's going to happen with this girl? And then she managed to get hold of me, managed to contact me. Well, she had a load of my money there, so I needed to get hold of her at some point. She said, "Look, Aaron, I want to stay. I want to wait for you to come out." At first, I was shocked. I was like, I don't understand it. I've only known this girl for 2 months, and she wants to stay and wait for me to come out of prison. That's crazy. So basically, we built a relationship from inside prison, and I mean, at the time, I suppose it was nice because I'd never had someone care about me like that. So I suppose I saw it was, this person must really like me. As she did love bomb me within a few more months of that, I didn't know what to do, because I was, like I said, I was scared of relationships, and I was really anxious about getting myself into a serious relationship. Because of what I'd learned from before, where every time I got into a relationship, I would lose myself. I would outsource myself, put that person's needs above my own, and I didn't want to do that again. I didn't want to lose, my success and the growth that I'd had so far. I didn't want to lose it again. And I also didn't want to get back into that anxious state. So I was a bit cautious. It continued, and, we talked every day through jail, and then it must have been about 2 months before I was due to come out. She rang me up one night, or I rang her, sorry, and I said to her, look, are you okay? We had a general conversation. And then she said to me, Aaron, I'm not sure how I feel. I was like, what do you mean you're not sure how you feel? She's like, I'll have to call you back. And then that was the last time I heard from her. And she just disappeared. She literally disappeared off the face of the earth. I didn't hear from her for like 3 months. I was in bits. I didn't know how to deal with this. I was dealing with like the first time being in jail. At the same time, I then had to deal with a breakup in jail. And I tell you what, when you're locked in a cell, that is not the best thing to happen. I can promise you that. It's a very lonely place when you've got to deal with something like that. I tried my best, but I was left in complete ambiguity at this point. And I just sunk into my nervous system like I always do. Started to blame myself, started to sabotage myself. Like, what have I done? I didn't know what I'd done. I had no clue if I had even done anything. There was no contact, there was no nothing. It was just a complete disappearance. And so I started to self-sabotage, blame myself. I'm not afraid to admit that I cried my eyes out, and for nights on end I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I didn't know what to do, I didn't know which way to turn, I didn't know what to think. I was just constantly seeking validation from her, and I just wasn't getting it. I had no kind of clarity or anything, and I was chasing clarity, like, what have I done? And then I managed to get hold of her probably like, I don't know, it must have been a month before I was due to come out. I hadn't been able to get hold of her for like a month and a half, 2 months. She finally started talking to me again, and then she just disappeared again. That was it. She just got scared, ran off again. And then I went through the whole same situation again. And it was just destroying me, it was losing parts of myself from that. And then it came to a point where she said that she wanted to come and see me for the last time. She just wanted to see my face. And me being me and being weak for relationships at the time and not knowing my own worth, I accepted it. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll see you, and we booked a visit, and then she didn't turn up, and then she got scared again. And then I just kept putting myself through the same thing, because I thought this was love. This is what I knew, this is what was comfortable for me. And then she booked another visit and turned up to that one, and then we decided to give it a go. When I first came out of prison, it all went very wrong for me. I had a lot of people rob me. I had a lot of people rob me for money. I had death threats, I had all sorts of stuff going on, and I got into a really big state of depression, and I just folded inwards. I shut down. I didn't know how to deal with anything, let alone a relationship at that time. It was hard, because I'd built this sort of false identity around myself, thinking that I was the big man, essentially, because I'd earned all this money, and it just wasn't me at my core, that wasn't who I was. And the relationship was fine for about 6 months. All of a sudden, it just switched up. And as soon as emotions got deep and it started to get real, and I wanted to, plan a future with this woman, essentially, that's when all of these little things started to come out. She didn't know how to deal with conflict. Every time conflict arose, she would shut down. She wouldn't open up to me. I couldn't hold space for her emotions because I was feeling my own emotions, and it was just emotionally charged, the whole relationship. It was so turbulent. It just got to a point where we both couldn't cope. I believe that we were just being a mirror for each other. We were just mirroring each other's insecurities, essentially. This is exactly what happens for me in every single relationship, and it happened for me in the past. I would self-sabotage. I would make out like it was my fault and that I could change and I could do this and I could do that, and I would fit into someone else's needs, and I'd just constantly shapeshift, basically. I mean, it broke down eventually. We split up. For me, that was probably the most traumatic relationship or breakup that I've ever been through, because having someone that's dismissive, avoidant, they don't know how to deal with their emotions or hold their own emotions or regulate their own emotions, so they cannot hold space for yours, and they shut down and they ghost and they do not speak to you and they treat you like you never existed. And for me, that was a first for me. Even though the other relationships have been bad, that was a first for me, and I felt like I'd met my match. It destroyed me inside. I mean, I must have been ruminating for months and months and months on end. I was just sitting there every night, crying my eyes out, having my abandonment wounds triggered constantly, questioning my worth, not eating, not sleeping, unable to function properly because I was just stuck in my nervous system constantly, because that's where it felt comfortable, and that's what I've known my whole life, is being comfortable in that nervous system. And when I look back at it, I was in such a bad way. But this relationship was the key to unlocking my true power and truly who I am. This is why I look for gratitude, and I look for the joy in these things and the positive outcome in these situations, because if it hadn't have happened, I may never have realized, and I may never have gone and looked inside of myself. And that's so important. So I am grateful for that relationship and grateful for that woman, because it opened my eyes up. I started to do research into attachment theory and relationship psychology, and that's when I found out, obviously, about her being dismissive avoidant and me being anxious. It's very turbulent when it's like that, because they're opposite ends of the spectrum, and you're basically just, like I said, a mirror for each other. But that's when I decided, and I looked inside and I thought, there's something wrong here with me. You know, there's some, not wrong per se, but there's something that needs fixing. And that's when I started doing a lot of research, looking into it, not just attachment theory, but childhood trauma in general. It opened my eyes, and that's when I went inside and I started to heal. It's the best thing that I've ever done in my entire life, was doing that. That moment of realizing that, and then being able to rewire my mind, heal my traumas, heal my body, heal my way of thinking, and get me out of my nervous system for the first time in my life. It's been amazing. It has been such a drastic change, and everything has changed in my life. And it's been the most amazing transformation. It really has. I ended up in an ambulance, okay? The ambulance came to work and picked me up because I thought I was having a heart attack. Little did I know that it was so much anxiety that I was having that was causing me to have panic attacks. And it was literally, it felt like it was squeezing my heart. You know, the paramedics said to me, they said, you're a young, healthy, fit guy. Like, you're not having a heart attack. We've done an ECG. And I just couldn't work out what it was. And that's when I knew it was obviously something to do with this. I just knew that this time around, I've got to fix it. I've got to get to the bottom of this. So I stripped everything away that I knew about myself, all the masks, all the faces that I'd had to wear, trying to be something, to fit in, or to think that people had to like me for being someone else. I stripped that all away. That went, and I had to come down to my core, and I had to say, who am I at my core? So I became a nobody. That's who I became. I became nobody again. I remember in my last relationship, a similar kind of situation, very turbulent, me doing the whole I'm insecure thing again. You know, this is triggering my wounds. And then I become needy, I became anxious, the same pattern over and over again. But the last time in that relationship, I remember going onto YouTube and just coming across it, just literally through scrolling by accident. And it said, how to break negative thoughts. And it was a video by a guy called Joe Dispenza. And I'm sure everybody knows who Joe Dispenza is. And I listened to it, and I listened to the whole thing. And I remember that at the end of it, I absolutely burst out into tears, and I'm not afraid to admit this. And that's when I decided to purchase a course from him. And I went through that whole course whilst I was in that relationship, didn't really stick to it, did some of the meditations, just kind of did what I normally do and just distract myself and, think everything's okay. But this time round, I went back through that course, because luckily I still had access to it. I managed to get into my old emails, and I went through the whole course, and I literally rewired my mind. And now I meditate every single night. I started journaling, I started breathing, I started healing my inner child. I went back in time and I did this. I don't know if this is a normal practice, but it worked for me, and this is what I did. The start of my inner child work was basically when I was in my meditations at night. I would put on some low frequency music, and then I'd listen to my breathing, and just concentrate on that. And so I'm in a really relaxed state. And then I would go back and I'd literally picture the times in my head when I was abandoned in my life. And I remember specifically having 3 separate versions of myself at different ages within my life, and going to them and approaching them from a third person view, from who I am now, from this core version of me, and saying, do you know what, it's okay. And I had to grieve these versions of myself, and I had to let go of an awful lot of stuff. And the first time I did it, these tears came down my face. It was almost like an empowering moment. It was more tears of joy, I suppose, that I was able to give them the love that they deserve, because at the end of the day, the best love that you can give is the one that you give yourself. And that's the most powerful love, because that's a lifelong relationship, is the love with yourself, right? God, it was so important to do that. I remember just saying to these 3 versions of myself, I've got you, you know, I'm never going to abandon you. I physically can't abandon you. I did this thing where I locked them inside my heart. I had this vision, okay? I opened up my heart and I grabbed these 3 versions of myself and I put them inside there and I closed it up. And inside with them went my soul. God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, went inside there with him. My soul looks after those, okay? And that is locked in there with my heart, with those 3 versions of myself. And every single day, I tell those versions of myself how much I love them. And you know what? I don't have that same problem anymore. I don't seek external validation anymore. I'm okay with being on my own. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I changed my whole belief system about myself. I raised my standards for myself. There's things I won't accept. I started setting clear boundaries with people. I know exactly what I want from relationships in the future. And I've kept my heart open this time. And I've said that when the right person comes along, I'll be ready for them, because I'm whole this time. And I'm proud of who I am. And I love who I am to my core, because this is the truest version of myself. This is the real me. And that's so important to get to that point, because I've been able to build from that. I've been able to rewind my mind. Like I said, all my negative thought patterns have gone. I think positive every day. One of the greatest things that you can practice, and the best thing for living a joyous life, is gratitude. I cannot express that enough, but being grateful for your life and putting your focus and attention on the present, okay? Because that is where joy is experienced, is in the present moment. And I had to let go of my past, because I spent for so long living in a past and a future and never seeing the present, and just missing out all that joy from the present moment, because I was just trying to change the future from my past, trying to predict a future from the past, and it just doesn't work. It just either puts you in anxiety or depression. And that is why it's so important to be grateful for your life, to be grateful for the things you have, and to focus on what you can control, because you can't focus on the things that you can't control, because you can't control them, right? And now I use this terminology and I call it the 3 U's, but I've become undeniable, unshakable, and unstoppable in who I am. My emotions, I feel unshakable in my emotions. There's nothing that anybody could say to me now. I don't care what others think of me anymore. I love myself inherently. So there's nothing that people can say or do to me that's going to put me off track, because I love myself no matter what. I'm in the best place emotionally I've ever been in my life. I don't sit in my limbic brain anymore. I don't sit in that fight or flight nervous system that I've been living in for the whole of my life. And trust me, it was so hard to break out of that, because to try and break 30 years, it was probably from the age of 3. So let's say 32 years worth of programming, right? To break that, it's so freaking hard. It's so much work, because you know what? The body, being the unconscious mind, does not want to give in. It consistently wants to drag you back, and it's like it will be driving your thoughts, because all these emotions that are stored in the body are driving these thoughts into your head, and they're saying, hold on, no, what are you trying to do? Why are you trying to change? You don't change. This is who you are. And it was a constant battle, you know, it's constant battle. And I had to just consistently stick with it and tell myself the new patterns, and create new patterns for myself, and continually do that over and over again until it was rewired, and that was the new pattern, and that was the new subconscious. And now I can tell you for a fact that neuroplasticity is a real thing, okay? It works. It really does work. Neuroscience is amazing. I've done a lot of studies on this, and for years they thought it was a load of mumbo jumbo, but the facts and the evidence is there now. And I tell you for a fact, and I'm saying it from myself, that it is 100% possible. And my life has changed. And I look now at my life from the inside out, okay, and not from the outside in. I don't look at my external environment for validation. I don't look at my external environment for things to change. I bend the universe from my inside. And that might sound a bit crazy, but I tell you what, that's the life I live, and that's how I live it now. Everything happens for me now. It doesn't happen to me anymore. I used to be in a victim mentality of blaming myself and blaming everything else and blaming external factors, but now I don't. Now I come from a place of true abundance, and I feel absolutely fantastic in myself, and that is my journey, guys. Now I'm in a place where I've come and I'm trying to help millions of others. My dreams are global. I want to help as many people as I can understand my story, and maybe it can help others get through it, because it's important to be able to serve something bigger than yourself. I want to be able to show others that it's possible to do that. It's possible to rewire your mind. It's possible to heal those traumas, and it's possible to live a life that you didn't think that you could ever live. That's the vision for me. And that's exactly why I started Human First, because I believe that I can help as many people as possible. I'm sure if you're listening to this, you may have some traumas of yourself and you may not know what to do or how to start. I'm here to guide you through it, because believe me, it is possible, and that's coming from my own heart. And I wouldn't want to tell you any lies or tell you that it's going to be easy, because it's not, and it's a journey and it takes time, but you can get through it and you can come out the other side. And when you come out the other side, you are going to feel so grateful for your life. Nothing is going to stop you, nothing. And you're going to feel like you can take on the whole world from a new perspective, a new mind, a new body, and you're going to be able to bend the world to your will, because everything starts from the inside. Everything. Thanks for listening, guys, to my podcast, and that's my story, and that's the Pheonix Path. So yeah, I really appreciate you guys for taking the time to listen to me and listen to my podcast, and hopefully you've gained a bit of insight to who I am and what I've had to go through. And I know that whoever's listening to this, I hope this resonates with you, and I hope that you can find the strength within yourself to heal whatever it is that you might need healing. If I can say but one last thing, is that my message to you is love yourself inherently and keep doing what you're doing if you're trying to work through it, because you know what, when you come out the other side, you are strong, you are powerful, and I really hope that you've taken